Alright, so I don't really know where we left off. I think I sort of walked you through the process of dropping this down. And the fact that I stood in there for over an hour, frantically trying to press the driver's side motor mount into position, which was a nightmare. That was a little over a week ago now. I've been working an insane amount, more than I was, and then it was Independence Day, and that's typically when we shut down work and travel, and that didn't get to happen. And it's just been a mess, a very, very limited free time. I've run into a very unique issue, and what it is, I'm going to explain it up here. I don't know that I can film it adequately. I've got decent pictures, though. Basically, if you recall, previous parts, obviously we pulled the motor, we've then pulled the torque converter, and we changed the front seal on the transmission. When we do that, we reseat the torque converter. I took measurements, I made sure everything was seated properly. I'm not exactly sure. I'm assuming this has to do with the height of the transmission probably not being like dialed in perfectly whenever we tried to mate these back up. But what has happened, if you recall, on the torque converter, okay, there were like 4 tabs. If we come right here to where our alternator will sit and we just made this a complete circle, and that was our torque converter, we would have like this bolt sticking out, you know, would be like a little boss, and that's drilled and tapped, and that's where your flex plate would bolt, right? And then there would be every 90 degrees we'd have one of those. So there's 4 of these, and the torque converter just recesses just a little bit more, because again, the boss that's drilled and tapped just comes out, I mean, literally about the same as the head of that bolt. I don't know how this happened. I've never had this happen in all the, 440s and 383s and 360s and 318s and all that stuff that I've done. I've never seen this happen. So instead of the flex plate, like sitting right here and me being able to run this bolt through the flex plate and into the torque converter, we've got a situation where the flex plate is standing on top of this. Like, it's literally, the flex plate is here on top of this mounting boss, and it should be here, flush with it, so you can run the bolt through. I spent, I don't know how much time, like every night when I get home, like 7:30 to 8, I'll run out here before I eat supper or before a storm comes or something, and I will play. I've got the transmission up. We didn't just leave it hanging. It's nothing like that. I have it on a transmission jack. The transmission jack has been great, super handy. It's one of those like sort of one-off tools. But when you need it, you need it. It's been awesome. It's going to serve me well in the future. That said, like, I've played with it. I've lowered it. I've raised it. I've done everything I can. I can come in right here. This is kind of a crude example for it, but I can grab onto this accessory bracket that we had powder coated, by the way. Looks awesome. And watch this. Like, I'm rocking the motor. I don't know if you can tell. Let me shut up a second. Like, that's all rocking, and I'm digging my abdomen into the grill guard, so it's kind of painful. But the bottom line is, like, it doesn't seem to want to happen, and I've positioned it, and I've raised the gantry, I've lowered the gantry, I've raised the transmission, lowered it. What I'm trying to avoid, and this could be stupid on my part, I could get one side of the motor in, and then it was this one that was just a nightmare, total nightmare. I raise it up basically all the way I can and retain the spool mounts inside the bracket. Again, you can see the nut right there on this side. I've had this position bottomed out, where it should be fully installed. I've had it raised up to where we have like a good chance of dipping the motor down and having the transmission tuck in. I've done the opposite, where, I try to raise the transmission. The bottom line is none of it's working. And I've got some last-ditch ideas which involve really, really big pry bars, which I didn't own. At work, there's quite a few, but I mean, like right here at the house, that was it. That was my pry bar. It was like a little 12-inch, and it was sufficiently fine for everything up until now. So the other issue is when I'm under the truck, I can't be out here manning the gantry. If I'm manning the gantry, I can't be under the truck manning the transmission. I haven't had a chance to get any help. I mean, maybe with 2 people I could like whip this out really fast. As a one-man show, it kind of sucks, I'm not gonna lie. And it makes your process impede, itself, if you will. It's like you're going half as fast as you could. But I'm gonna try the big pry bar, because the issue with that one and anything, I've had the Vericolos down there with the extension on, trying to just wedge and shimmy things into position. It's a little too big. The other issue is, even though there's a trans mount and there's the motors in place, I don't really like being underneath things trying to shimmy them, because something's gonna give and then it's gonna have an equal and opposite reaction. And I don't like the thought of being under that, especially, like when you're by yourself. And luckily I try to keep my phone around me, and, like now there's like a watch I could potentially like phone for help type of a thing. It's just the added benefit of a really long pry bar is what I'm going to shoot for. So that's kind of where it stands right now. I'm going to attempt now. I don't know that I can do it. I'm going to try to get under the truck and sort of show you what I'm talking about. So if that scenario there didn't make sense, again, if you watch the previous videos, you should at least like piece together the components I'm talking of. For everyone else struggling to grasp it, I'm going to do my best to wedge the camera in to show you. And again, in all the motors I've pulled, granted, I usually pull the engine and transmission together, so that helps avoid this entirely. But there's been many times, like you need the 440 and you yank it, or your buddy's like, hey, we got to get the 383 out to put a 440 in, and that's what you do. The transmission stays in place. I've never had this happen, and granted, I don't usually contend with spool mounts either. That may have something to do with it. There's a whole host of potential issues, but the most likely culprit is like, I wanted to keep the transmission up and not have a strain, where it's dropping down because it doesn't have the motor anchoring it in position. Maybe I just have that like too jacked up or lowered it down too much. I lowered it a bit when I came in, but that's because I like jacked it up some. I don't know the exact measurement beforehand, but maybe, you should like measure from the trans pan and the bell housing down to the ground. Hopefully it's level, and document that to possibly avoid this. But yeah, that's what it is. And this is something, again, freak deal I've never had happen. But we're going to try to figure it out. So I'm going to try to show it to you, and then I'm going to just go about off camera trying to figure it out, whether it's a 36-inch breaker bar and a 3-foot rod, or if it's just taking the motor all the way out. Heaven forbid, I hope it doesn't come to that, but if it does, so be it. Something's got to give, because I need this thing connected and it's not. So I'll try to get you a visual of what I'm talking about. All right, another thing I hate and would really like to address, this creeper, it's got a bent caster, and I can't make quick exits. And, geez. Harbor Freight came out with some new ones. They never seem to have the blue one in stock. Never have the green one either, but I might pick one up. The casters, I've just had a nightmare of a time finding casters of this size. But anyway, all that aside, if you note, I got the exhaust. We come over, you got the K&N filter. The shiny new looking thing, I'm going to try to tap it for you. Watch this just drop it down into place for us. That would be great, wouldn't it? It's right there that I tapped just then. That's our Flexplate. It's kind of a funky angle for you. This is the transmission housing, and then the oil pan in the back of the block, right? You can see that like the transmission and engine aren't close to going together. And if I bring you way back over here, and of course it's not gonna focus very well. I'm doing everything I can. Okay, so this is a really bad angle for you, but you'll see like 2 bolts there. That's for the dust plate. And then you see that kind of mounting boss thing. If you look at the shiny silver thing I've tapped, and then look at the mounting boss, which I've tried to focus for you, that's the torque converter, and the flex plate should not be sitting on it. It should be that 90-degree lip. Oh, the magnet. Okay. The 90-degree lip right here should be underneath that. Same thing on this side. Man, I don't like being in this position. Can't really get to another one. Anyway, that's my best chance to showcase this to you. And that's our issue. The other one is sort of occluded by this. I think if we were on the driver's side, we could maybe go up 90 degrees from that one and find it, but I think you know what I'm talking about now. It's just super unfortunate. And again, even though this is a lifted truck, man, it's still cramped quarters. I've got the axle right on top of my head and all kinds of stuff. So I did the best I could to kind of showcase this. Again, I don't know how it happened. I don't know what caused it. I don't exactly know how to remedy it. I'm just going to start trying to mate them. So that's what I'll be doing. Just want to be like, I don't like to do the whole like edit it and well just put your motor in. It never works that way. It never happens like the TV shows. It's one of those things. It's even a lot of YouTube people are just like too proud to showcase like stupid stuff like this. It happens. It always happens. And we're just trying to figure out what caused it. I'm also, on another note, not exactly sure where I put the bell housing bolts, and that's sort of an issue in and of itself. It's also very difficult for me not to run over the camera cord. Proud that we didn't, but right there, I mean, the jack is done fine. It's just clearly I didn't have these two like ideally positioned or we wouldn't be in this predicament. There's putting in work right there. Or attempting to. But yeah, it was also leg day yesterday for the first time in a while, and man, I'm super sore. So I'm gonna mess around with this a little bit, get inside, make supper. I think there's some storms on the way, so I kind of need to shower so I can go to work, so I can make money to, you know, have free time to possibly do this every once in a while. So anyway, that's what I'm facing. It's really weird. If I knew how I got in this position, I'd tell you what to do to avoid it. As is, I don't. I just know we're in it, and I'm going to attempt to figure it out. Also, side note right there, 777AA, that's kind of a cool part number. And 798AA. Don't know if it's showing up super great on the camera. Pretty cool. Just random observations from your back with your legs in pain. So I'm going to get some breaker bars out. I say breaker bar, I mean pry bar. It's just a bad habit. But wish me well, and I will let you know what ultimately worked for me. Hey everybody, Texas Stroker here, Lance's Performance Shop, Lone Star Mopars.com. It's Saturday night, about 9:30. A sultry Saturday night, but a good one. The motor is in, it's bolted partially to the transmission. And I had to bring in the big guns. Machinist actually swung by here and I brought his breaker bars and creeper, which is good because I've got a bent caster on mine, makes it a pain to wheel around. That's what you hear in the background if you're ever curious. But basically I was out here with the gantry, went up and down very slowly, and he was down there with the breaker bar. Wound up having to use my little 12-inch Pittsburgh there at the end, but he, I guess, knows the limits of the Flexplate, which is apparently a lot, and that's what was used to pry. And what his summation was is probably, you know, since it's an aftermarket crank, there's no bevel, you know, for that to seat to the snout of the converter. It's kind of one of those deals where it's just square. And he said the factory has a really nice bevel, which obviously in this case, mating two things, if you've got a bevel and you can just slide in easy versus super tight tolerance is square, no bevel, it's going to be a pain, particularly with, you know, transverse angles, if you will. So bottom line, it's in. He got the big bell housing bolt through over there on the starter side, which I think I have to pull that to get a tab in on the starter, possibly. I think he got two of the little bell housing bolts in, the Flexplate bolts, since he said, hey, I'm down here, you got them. Handed him the bag, got that taken care of. And I think the mid bell housing bolt over here, what is lacking right now, number one, I took the CPS sensor off, mainly because I was convinced that that was like the thing that was holding me back. It, spoiler alert, was not, as we now know. But, that's going to be fun to drop back in. It's kind of a blind install, if you will. Same with the back two, like the top two bell housing bolts, kind of like right in line with, you know, the intake runners, if I'm thinking correctly. Maybe more on the head side. The good news is this manifold, the Hughes air gap, we've got a lot more clearance as opposed to the into the kegger, and I think I can see back there. I can get like more tools, maybe a mirror and a light even, so that'll be super nice. Down below the big bolt, which I'll try to get the specs for you when we're down there, but on this side it's not in because of course the oil filter blocks it. So I think I'm gonna pull the filter, try to catch what drains out in a pan. This will be something I cannot film but there's liable to be a puddle for you to enjoy. And then get the bolt driven in as quick as I can to mitigate, you know, that constant little drip coming down. And then button it back up, spin the filter back on, call that good. We've got the Flexplate cover. Obviously everything here under the hood. Something I might do in the meantime that I'll showcase here. The core support I put back on mainly just because when I'm on a step stool to crawl in here, it's really nice to have this as a solid brace. I don't have all the bolts in. There's 2 here, 2 on the other side. But that little guy there, I put him in on both sides just to give me something, again, sturdy to get in and out of the truck with. It's also a nice seat when you don't have the radiator and fan shroud. But what I will need to adjust here, this will bolt in with these little 10mm sockets. We got to throw together into this threaded insert. But down there, let me try to... Ooh, tripped over a 3-foot breaker bar because I have one now. But right down there where you sort of see that hole, trying to get you where you can see it, my finger points to it right there. This has little plastic tabs or rubber legs or something that would seat in that. And clearly it doesn't like to go. I don't want to run the risk of breaking it off. I'm trying to keep this condenser in functioning working order and not have a leak. So I'm going to simply unbolt this, maybe even just on one side, and then swing the core support over, and then that should allow me to pick this up, drop it down. I can then fully bolt the core support back in. This triangular bracket, I don't even know if you can see it. I don't have much time on this card. And past that, the step stool is over elsewhere in the shop, but a little triangular bracket right there, which the top bolt would be here where my finger's pointing. That sucker can be anchored in. That will get the front kind of put back together, and then it'll basically be jumping in here. Throttle body has to go on, the lift plate needs to come off to do that. Tons of electrical connections, throttle linkage, fuel line connection. I'll try to break it down, do it in reverse order for you. Might top this off with coolant before I put the alternator in. Don't really know, but I think I've got like a minute left on this card. I wanted to get this captured while I was thinking of it. The other deal, those freaking transmission cooler lines, which that's the socket we tripped over. Those 2 guys right here, in your way all the time when you're trying to jostle the engine and train together. I went back and looked at my previous videos. There was like a stud that came out of the block somewhere in that area, and the gold zinc plated tab. I'll have to figure out how all that crud goes, but I'll need to do that, and that kind of catches you up. So what I'll probably be doing here tonight real quick, just before I run in and work out, is maybe the bell housing bolts, might take the filter off while I'm still pretty dirty, and we'll see how it goes. So tonight, charge up the camera batteries, clear some space on this card, come out here, try to do a better job at documenting things. Call it good. So again, big shout out to Dallas for coming by and helping. I would have gotten it eventually, but I have no idea how long it would have taken. And again, my fear honestly was I would bend the flex plate, throw something out of alignment, or possibly with the pry bar, like I could see a chip coming out of the bottom of the transmission, and of course we could ruin the front pump. But anyway, super happy, gonna get to work. We'll see how it goes.